Hello there everyone, and welcome back to whatever the heck Jesse uploads. Today we are coming to day 2 of the China trip, and you're probably wondering, well, why are you still at home? And that is because, as I explained in the first video, there are kind of just a lot of various clips that I recorded of things that were important or kind of cool while I was on the trip, and so I'm having to record these filler clips to kind of explain what is going on. So for day 2, this was actually perhaps one of the most meaningful days for me personally, even though it was only day 2 of the trip. And this was the visit to Meiguan Pass and Zhuji, I think they pronounce it Ancient Town, so which I'll get into the history of that a bit more further in the video. But this day started incredibly early because, as you probably saw from the first video, we had just gotten there and our sleep was all discombobulated from switching over from American time to Southern Chinese time. And we had to get up that next day at 5 a.m. and be downstairs by 5:30 a.m. and on the bus to get to the train station. So, without further ado, I will quit yapping and we will get into the video now, and I'll kind of explain things when necessary as we go along.
My name is Stony, and I'm your tour guide. Okay, so for the next 2 weeks that you're going to hang out with me, and also for the people who continue to Yunnan, you'll still see me. All right, until the end of this month. Okay, all right, and then so now we're going to the Guangzhou South Railway Station.
We are on the way to Shaoguan now, and I'm just hanging on the escalator. Okay, so this was one of the craziest parts of the trip. To me, it was personally one of those culture shock things that I didn't really expect. But then again, I haven't been on public transportation or trains much in my life, since I kind of grew up in rural areas for most of my life. But when we got to the railway station in Shaoguan, about 5 to 6 minutes before arriving, we all had to get up out of our seats, and you're probably wondering why. And that is because we had no more than 60 seconds to hop off the train, or otherwise we were probably all going to go flying off of the train. So that was a really kind of crazy experience, and it ended up actually being the same thing going back from Shaoguan on the train, I guess a couple days later or so, and we only had 60 seconds to get back on and get back to wherever we were going, so that was pretty crazy. Okay, so as you can see, we got off the train and made it, thankfully, even though we only had 60 seconds to do so. And we made it to the general train station in Shaoguan. And my first impressions of that city, getting into kind of like it was kind of like a small mall slash rain cover slash train station about 100 feet away from where we got off. Where we all went to and set down our luggage. People went to the bathrooms, did whatever they need to do, got a few snacks or something from one of the stores kind of in the lobby. But Shaoguan is a military city, I learned very quickly, because when we all entered there was a huge like LED board that was about the size of the wall, and I may have actually gotten video of it, I'm not sure, that showed a huge military advertisement. But after we got done kind of getting settled there, we all then walked about another 100-200 feet to where the bus was, and we embarked on a 2-hour drive to Meiguan Pass. And the drive out there was incredibly beautiful. Unfortunately, I didn't take a whole lot of video of the actual drive out there because I was just kind of in awe watching the countryside and all the beautiful mountains and stuff for the 2-hour drive there. But it was really cool seeing all of that as we went there, and that was kind of when I felt like I was actually in China, because that is kind of the scenes and views I was most familiar with compared to some of the cities.
Like the north gate of Guangdong, the north gate of Guangdong, okay? But it's a small city. It's a small city. The population is
Okay guys, so this is the entrance to the Meiguan Pass, and here's a stone tablet from I think the Tang or Song Dynasty. Behind me is the nice little concession stand. Then over here you got some bathrooms and stuff over that way. And here's the beginning of the trail behind me. When you get to the top, you enter the border of another province, so it is pretty cool, but I will show you all along the way. So behind me is Meiguan Pass, the place of origin for pretty much all southern Chinese in Guangdong province. This gate was built during the Song Dynasty, and it is still standing today for all of us to look at. This is the Song Dynasty.
in Tang Dynasty. I said the Prime Minister, he fixed this.
So behind me is now Jiangxi province, since we have crossed the border. And now we're headed back down. It's a really beautiful and special place. Okay, so as we arrive at Zhuji Ancient Town, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. If I'm not, feel free to comment and tell me how to pronounce it properly. But when we got done hiking up Meiguan Pass, so which was about a 2-mile hike up the mountain, and it was a very beautiful and special place. There's a uniquely ancient feeling to that place that I didn't feel in other sites that we visited. So I felt it important to kind of fill in more about that site. As I said in the video, it is the place of origin for almost all southern Chinese. So I'm going to tell you all a little bit of the history of the Meiguan Pass and Zhuji Ancient Town before you see all the clips that I recorded while I was there. So the Meiguan Pass was established about 2,000 years ago when Chinese people from central China, so Hunan province in particular, all started fleeing south because of nomadic northern tribes, wars, and famines that were going on north of what became Guangdong province. So a lot of these early Chinese, Han Chinese settlers went south all through the Meiguan Pass, since they found that to be the best way to get there and the safest way to get there, because you have to understand a lot of the season in southern China is very rainy, very muddy, and flooding. So when our first ancestors kind of first started going through that pass, it was nothing more than a muddy, rocky trail, and you can imagine them hauling their carts and all their belongings, carrying them on their back or on the wagons, and that's about all they could do. And it was probably very slippery, especially bringing cattle or anything up that mountain. But when they got on the other side of that mountain into Guangdong province, a lot of these Han Chinese people encountered the Nanyus, or the Yu people, so which were a series of like 200 different tribes almost, that were native to that part of China, and they had always been there. Same with northern Vietnam and stuff. So, which is why southern Chinese people and northern Vietnamese people kind of look alike and are very closely related. I know that's a controversial thing to say, but even our tour guides told us as much, and genetic studies have shown that to be the case. So, over that, 2,000 year span of time since Meiguan Pass began, for about the first 800, 900 years, most of those early Han Chinese settlers settled right on the other side in what would become Zhuji ancient town. And in that place, kind of getting into the history of the town itself, that is where all those early Chinese clans settled, and you'll see probably in a few minutes a clip of a huge wooden plaque that shows all the different clan surnames kind of in diagonal lines that came through that pass, showing if you're from that family, you likely originated through that pass in southern China some 2,000 years ago, almost. But what happened was eventually, of course, people started going outside of Zhuji ancient town and settling, and eventually, imperial governments encroached and invaded in the south. So what happened generally, and this is the case of Chinese genealogy, I learned this especially while I was in China, that the genealogies of the women were not ever recorded up until probably the late 20th century if you did something very remarkable. So when these Han Chinese settlers moved south, a lot of the men married native Yu women, and they mixed with them. So Southern Chinese, or Southern Han people, I guess as they're called, we are pretty much a mixture of kind of half Yu and half Han Chinese, so which is why we look a bit different than people in northern China and tend to be a bit shorter. I'm taller, of course, because I'm mixed, but that's another story. But in all due honesty, my great-grandfather, who is 100% Chinese from that region, he's actually about as tall as I am, so not all southern Chinese people are short. That is a myth, but I was just trying to say that to make a fair point. Let me check my notes. So that is the origin of kind of how southern Chinese people came to be. But I will stop yapping now and info dumping all of my historical knowledge on this place because I just found it incredibly fascinating. And something I should note before I end this part of the video is all of the Zhuji ancient town is pretty much a town of ancestral halls. And all these were built by the 175, 180 Chinese clans that went south from Henan province, so which I thought was really neat. And of course, some of them are much newer and some are much older than each other. But while I was walking around on some of the more unpaved streets in Zhuji ancient town, there was roof tiles and pottery from pretty much every era you could imagine of Chinese history, so which I thought was really cool.
同堂在我们这里7代同堂啊，皇帝也是那个条环7代盘桓，所以你可以关注搜索张老卢，关注我搜索卢氏宗祠，老赵关注我搜索赵氏宗祠。
This is the ancient street, and we're heading down it at the moment. Got a lot of vendors. Got it here on the side, and then they have some construction for the new ancestral halls. And right now, me and some of my close but distant relatives are heading to the Chen ancestral hall, and I'm going to try to stop by the Lem one if we can find it. It's a new hall.
I don't know what clan it is. Probably
Yeah.
It's this one right there and right there.
It's in the script, yeah.
right to left.
Okay, so as we began our search for the Chen clan ancestral hall, since many people kind of on this trip that we're all going on together, most of us have Chen ancestors somewhere in our immediate family tree or a bit further back in our family tree. So we were all very eager to find this ancestral hall because the first Chen ancestors in Guangdong province settled in Zhuji ancient town, so it is a very special place to kind of venerate the ancestors and pay homage to them and pray for the well-being of our clan and family. I don't know the exact age of the Chen clan ancestral hall, but I kind of wanted to explain to y'all in this video what an ancestral hall is and kind of what we were doing there, and kind of what's in there. That way y'all aren't lost and confused, since I know for a lot of people kind of outside of, a family that has, Chinese heritage or culture in America, you'll probably not likely understand what any of it is. So I want to bring that to y'all and share that with you. So an ancestral hall, first and foremost, is a place that's kind of just rooted more in Chinese culture and not even so much Chinese religion, because pretty much everyone in China venerates their ancestors to some degree, at least once or twice a year, but it's not viewed as religious. And I found this very interesting when I met a lot of people in China and talked to them. We were talking about the ancestral rites. We were talking about it, saying, yeah, we do this and we do that in our village, and there's these beliefs associated with it. But then when I asked them a bit later on, like a day or two later, do you have a religion or anything? They'd all say no. So it's kind of a very big difference culturally for people in Western countries versus in East Asia and stuff, because a lot of what is viewed as just a part of life or daily life there, and culture is not seen as religion there. But when we see that here in America and Western countries, we see it very much as being very ritualistic and religious, so which I thought was very interesting. But when we went, as you're probably going to see in a few minutes, when we went in the ancestral hall, I'm not sure how old the ancestral hall is. I think it was rebuilt, if I remember correctly, but it was somewhere in the general side of the original. But when we went in to the main hall, you could see the 3 statues on the altar, and you're probably wondering, are these gods or something? No, they are the ancestors. So on the altar, you have in the center the first Qin ancestor to enter Guangdong province and settle there in what is Zhuji ancient town. And then on the side, I think, are 2 of his prominent sons, if I'm correct. Behind him, of course, ancestral tablets listing kind of the immediate generations after them when they settled there. And some of the portraits on the wall and stuff are of the sons of all those early Qin ancestors. And all of us, when we were in the temple, we were like looking up all the plaques in the genealogy book there, trying to figure out which Qin son we descended from. Some of us who were a bit more researched in it had better luck figuring out which one we descend from, and some of us, who don't have as clear lines of where exactly it goes back that far, didn't have as much luck, but it was still nonetheless very meaningful for all of us to go there and pay homage and respects to our ancestors. And it was very cool that some of the people who I became good friends with on the trip actually come from a Qin village very near to my ancestral Qin village. It's literally like a block over, so it was cool to get to pay our honors and respects there to our ancestors and pray for the well-being of our families and ourselves and the general success of the clan. So that was a very neat and meaningful experience, needless to say.
Name.
What's the movie that's on?
Có hành phần có hành mình hại những phần nó bao xung mà chụp của bao hơn mình nhé. Okay.
After much wandering around, we finally found the Lun Clan Ancestral Hall. It took us going down some alleyways and stuff, but thankfully they had a very nice guide there. When I met him, I had to use pretty much every last bit of Cantonese and Chinese that I possibly knew in order to understand what he's trying to convey to me, but it was still really cool. Go off and reels them up.
Get off the bus. Also bring your luggage down.
Okay, and so after a 2-hour ride back to Shaoguan by bus, out of the Zhuji ancient town and the village right next to it, was once again a 2-hour ride back to Shaoguan. And by the end of the day, everyone was pretty tired because we had done a lot of hiking and a lot of walking. For me personally, since I kind of live out in the hills myself, in Texas, the hike up Meiguan Pass was, of course, very different, you know, in its appearance and look from here. But the actual physical, strenuous walk of it to me wasn't as bad since I'm used to hiking, you know, every other day almost. So that was kind of a benefit that I didn't feel as zapped, but I was still pretty tired since it is a lot more humid in southern China than it is here in Texas where I'm at. But it was really cool and a very meaningful day, and I kind of like that the first day of really exploring as a group on this trip started with the place of common origin for pretty much all of us on that trip, so which was really, really cool. But as you can see in the clip, once this part of the video ends, we got back to the, I think it said Crown Plaza Hotel, forgive me, I may be thinking of another one later, so forgive me if I get that wrong. I'll put a little correction thing there. But when we got back to the hotel, everyone was very eager to get upstairs and rest for a bit. But before that, we all had a very large and nice dinner. I may insert a picture here if I took a picture of it. If not, then there'll be no picture of it, unfortunately. But it was a very good dinner, and the interactions with the staff there at the restaurant in the hotel in Shaoguan was very cool because a lot of them, when they talked to the people in the group who could speak Mandarin fluently, they told us that that was the first time they had ever seen foreign people from outside of China in their lives. So that was really, really cool to kind of experience that and be good ambassadors to the people of China, to show that us Chinese Americans aren't too crazy or different than them. So yeah, that was really cool. The food was good. But it was a very meaningful day, and still even now, even though it's been like almost a month and a half since I've gotten back from China, I am still kind of processing these days, and I'll just be out walking or at work or something and just very fondly think of these times and experiences there and getting to see these places that are very deeply tied to our common history, but also our personal history. So, yeah, I think I will kind of end it off here. That way I don't over-info dump on all of you, but this was by far one of my favorite days personally while on that trip, and it was very meaningful. And if you ever get the chance to go to China and you happen to have Southern Chinese ancestry, or even you don't, I would definitely recommend checking out the Meiguan Pass and Zhuji ancient town, just because it's a very beautiful, kind of raw place that's just kind of more natural, I guess, and has a lot more of the kind of traditional culture or vibe going. And something I do want to mention as well, and I'll probably put a picture in here once again if I have one. We had lunch actually in Zhuji ancient town, so which is, they said it was a small city, but to me it was more like a village compared to some other villages we saw later. But in that village we had lunch together, and my parents were concerned about me eating lunches in the village because they weren't sure of, like, because, like, for some people when they go to Mexico and stuff, they drink the water and it just absolutely wrecks their crap, so to say, and gives them really bad sickness. But I did not experience that. The village restaurants were actually incredibly clean. They weren't like American, quote-unquote, clean or anything, but I never got sick once eating at any of those restaurants, and the food was quite good and fresh. I must say most of the chicken and stuff that we ate was killed on the spot and cooked for us about an hour or so later, since they knew we were coming. So it was good stuff. But yeah, I will stop rambling about now. But if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to share it with your friends or family, or if you're people on this trip, feel free to take any of the clips from this video for your own personal use as well. Everyone is kind of sharing each other's footage to complete our own vlogs and videos separately and together. So I hope that y'all enjoyed today's video, and if you have any questions about this particular part of the trip, please be sure to leave them down in the comment section below, and I'd be happy to try to answer the best that I can for all of you. But this has been Jesse, or whatever the heck Jesse uploads, and I will see y'all next time. Bye.